rusty wheels and knew I'd take her home. I brought her to my farm in an Amish neighborhood where simple living's valued. She'd be loved and understood. I put her on a treadle stand and coaxed her wheel to turn. I felt her joy and easing with my study and concern. I cleaned her and I oiled her, showed her off to all my friends, repaired the hurts of years and let her sew again.
Hello there. I need to apologize because it is bitterly cold outside. And the other day I got up to the top of the hill. You know, I'm like 2 flights of stairs on a steep hill to come up to my shop. And I realized that I had forgotten to bring my camera up here. And so I was up here anyway, and I had the machine. I was pulling it out of the stripper, and I just decided, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and go for it because it's below 0 outside right now. It's going to get to like 10 below tonight, you know, and then you add wind chill on top of that. You know, weather is not really happy right now. But I got her painted, and I'm going to throw up some pictures of what paints I was using and what the different stages look like. On my phone, I just took a couple quick shots and everything, so I'll throw those up to you. But I wanted to show you, I guess if you're watching, it's a we. We're going to decal her today. And as you can see, she is pearly white. So she had a bright white base coat, you know, over the primer and everything. And then a good coat of pearl mist over the top of that. So I think that she's really beautiful. I don't know if you're able to see the pearl on here, but anyway, that's it. So I need to go get her pack of decals. This customer machine, they bought a set of decals from 𝐷ecals.com. And I love their decals for reproduction ones because they do look a lot more metallic than some of the other ones out there. So, but you have to cut them out very carefully, you know, just leaving a couple millimeters around the design. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we'll get started getting her decaled up. Okay, so I just opened the envelope package, and I said there were the Celtic decals earlier. I was wrong. She had got the Tiffany decals, and they have like a green to rose kind of tint on there also with a metallic-ish backing. So that's going to be really pretty. It comes with, this is for a 66. It comes with the 2 different sheets. Honestly, just to let you know, the hardest part of decaling a machine is usually this one right here, because that is a very flat piece and it has to like mold around this sphere looking area there. So yeah, that's going to be the toughest spot, but they will look beautiful, especially on this pearl paint job. So I'm going to go ahead and get them cut out, and then we'll be back. So while I'm cutting these out, one thing I wanted to mention is that, you know, as I'm doing more and more machines, I'm, you know, trial and error, learning a lot more things. And what I did in earlier videos, I'm not necessarily doing the same techniques in the current ones. So I had someone asking me about how long I wait in between coats of paint. And I know in my earlier videos, I would wait the full gas off period after the primer before I would put on the enamel. And here's my thought process. If you put a primer on the machine, at least this is what I have learned the hard way, okay? If I put a primer on the machine and there's something that I need to refine, some sanding and things I need to do, or, you know, stuff like that that's going to take longer, or I don't have time to do the full paint job at that point and everything, if I wait more than, like, say, half an hour, give myself half an hour between the time that I put the last coat of primer on and the time that I'm going to give myself to start the enamel coats, I get a little bit nervous because The primer has not completely gassed off, but it's hard enough that if you put enamel over it, sometimes it might bubble and things like that. But I have also learned that if I put my primer on, you know, and only wait maybe 10 or 15 minutes, it's going to be hard enough that I can buff it down with a clean microfiber cloth and a tack cloth and things. And honestly, that usually is great. It's only the really porous, badly finished machines that sometimes need extra help. But 90% of the time, what I do now is after I put the primer on, you know, give it 10 or 15 minutes, buff it down with a microfiber, buff it down with a tack cloth, which is a sticky gauze. It's in paint supply stuff. And so that pulls all the little dust and lint and whatever else might have settled on from the microfiber or whatever is in the air. And then go ahead and start putting my coats of enamel. And I usually space those out about 15 minutes per coat. Okay? And so basically, I'm getting the entire paint job on her without the clear coat. Okay? Just the enamel and everything at one time. And then I want to wait until that enamel has time to really harden. Okay, because it's going to feel dry like within an hour, but it's not. So usually I give it 2 or 3 days before I decal. I think that this is like day 3 here for this paint, and I feel safe with that. And then after I decal, I want to give it plenty of time for any residual water that might be stuck, you know, with one of these guys to fully evaporate before I clear coat. So I give it another 24 hours with the heater on in my paint booth. And I also, especially in cold weather like this, I also put the paint that I'm going to be using in the paint booth with it so it can be the same temperature as the machine. So like right now it's really, really cold. I have a heater going in my shop, but it's still cold, you know. So once I get her decals on, I'm going to put her clear coat paint, which is my Sherwin-Williams Finish 1 stuff up there. I'll put that, you know, on a table inside my booth in there. And so tomorrow or so, when I go to clear coat her, everything's going to be the same temperature, and it's going to be ready to go. So I just wanted to clarify that. I know I still get a lot of comments on some of my older videos wondering why in the world you do something that way. And I'm tempted to respond, well, I don't do it that way anymore, but then that gets even longer of a response. So there you go. Okay, so I've got all of my decals cut out, and I'm going to use this for my little water basin. I'm going to put a drop of dish soap in there. I don't have a hot water heater in here, but I do have a Mr. Coffee. So I've just run water through my Mr. Coffee and mixed it with instant for my pot. But I'm going to put hot water in here from there and then add a little bit of cold so that this will end up being nice warm water for me to put my hands in. Okay, so I've got my water, and I want to show you, oops, chairs on my pants here. If you go on the SingerDecals.com website, they're going to have pictures to show you where the different decals go, because there's a lot of them, you know, and trying to place it. And what I want to do is start on the top. And so this is like a shot straight down. If I start on the top, all of my water that's going to drip down, I can wipe this off, you know, so I don't have decals here and then drip fresh water on it and everything. So it's hard to tell, but in the middle of this big decal here, that's actually on the base, okay? And then in the middle of it is my wording of the Singer Manufacturing Company. So this one is actually on top, and this big one is on the base. So you just have to kind of figure it out. So let me go ahead and I'll show you how I put a couple of them on, like up here. Okay, so I'm gonna dunk this in my warm water, and it's gonna go up here on top. Okay, give a second. All right, so now I can just slide it up. And we're going to see how pretty it's going to look on this white, pearly white paint. All right, let me get a cloth here. I want to line it up between the holes so it's very straight. There we go. Okay, so then I can see around here, there's going to be these two little pieces. This one is behind. I should just take this off right now because it's kind of in the way. This one is behind here, and this one is in front of it. Now these are going over some of the oil holes and things. I'm just going to put them on complete now. Once they are totally dry, then I'll cut out that little oil hole. So let me move it over here so I can line up with the post and the center of my wording right here. Okay, so you can see that little dark spot, that's the oil hole I'll be cutting out. And then the same back here. Let's see if I move that up. Now this is going onto a curve. I'm hoping that I can just form it. I did not make any cuts in it. You see how it's, sorry. Do you see how it's wanting to wrinkle ever so slightly right there? That's just because I'm forming it around a ball, basically. What I'm going to do is come in here and make a cut right there. And get a paintbrush, nice and wet. And lift it up so that they can kind of overlap instead of wrinkle. That's my hope. I think that's enough to cover all of those over here. I might need to make one more little cut right here. Okay, get my paintbrush again. Pull out that wrinkle and let them overlap. Okay. All right, so hopefully you can see how that's all flattened out now, and that's just because instead of buckling up, they're now laying like that. All right. So that's how I do it. I'm just going to leave the camera going for a little bit while I put some more on. Okay, so she's decaled. You see, I did remove a lot of her silicone plugs just because you never know what you're going to need to remove. Because like up here, you know, I had some of those decals covering holes. So now what I'm going to do is go back, remask this area. I pulled my masking off of her number. So that's going to get clear coated over. And the decals, even in their little picture, this little leaf of the decal comes over the number, which is kind of cute. That's how they had it in their picture too, so there you go. So I'm going to go ahead, remask her, put her back into the paint booth so that she can, you know, warm and dry and everything like that. Put my paint in there, and tomorrow I will be clear coating her. All right, so welcome to a couple days later, and earlier today I clear coated this machine. If you can see how lovely she looks and everything. So even though the clear coat is dry to the touch now, I still want to give it at least a couple days before I start messing with her, because if I like dug my fingernails into her, it would leave those marks. Once this is really, really dry, it's hard as a rock. So that's going to be good. Here is her wheel. Also lovely. Don't know if you can see the pearl finish, but it's quite nice. So anyhow, I just wanted to show her, and next time we'll start putting her back together. Hello everybody, welcome back, and this time we're going to be putting this 66 back together again. I think that we have waited long enough, and her clear coat is nice and hard, so I feel pretty safe working on her. And a lot of times I start on the bottom, but I'm feeling kind of interesting today, so I'm going to go ahead and start up here in her nose. So let me put these other pieces aside and get out all of her needle bar, presser bar, and all of that stuff. Okay, so one of the first things I'm going to do is put this in, because it goes in the background here, and make sure the spring is on. This little hole in the casting is where it gets attached to. This releases the tension in the tension unit once you raise the lifter lever, which we'll put on after this. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. The screw has a little shoulder on it like that. And, well, that did not stay on very well. As you can see, I did leave the bushing in. I masked around it down here. I can clean it up right there, but that's going to be just fine. Oh my goodness, I'm having issues today. Give me a second, let me get that screwed in. You know what I'm going after here. Okay, so while I'm screwing it in, I want to make sure that I don't get that shoulder. I don't want to pinch this behind the shoulder. I want to make sure that once I have it screwed in all the way, nice and tight, that this little piece will still rotate freely. It's giving me issues. Okay, so see that's still moving, even though it's in all the way. Actually feels a bit loose. What is up with that? Well, it is in all the way. The spring is doing its job, so we're going to call that good. And I'm going to go ahead and get the lifter lever and put that in this slot over here. It is also nice and clean. So we want it to curve towards the bottom, okay, and this is what the little screw looks like. Again, another shouldered screw that's going to hold it on. Okay. Okay, so when I lift this, it needs to push against this piece that we put on first, and it does, so that is good. Okay, I am going to start with my needle bar, and just so I don't forget, I've just gone ahead and slid it through, let it drop down here at the bottom, so it's just kind of resting down here. because I was not able to get this cap out and just painted it because it could not come out, so it's still beautiful. And I have a rubber stopper in here that I need to pull out still. Come on, little guy. There he goes. Okay. So, what I'm going to do, because this is in here now, I'm going to go ahead and put the little timing mark indicator back on. It just kind of pushes over and sets down. I'm going to turn it so that it is facing the front just a little bit more. There we go. All right, that's pretty good. Now I have this piece, and off camera I took it apart, cleaned it, and then put it back together. So I have this piece here that I actually need to put a little more oil in. This is the needle bar clamp, okay? And this, if you did take it apart, that is a reverse threaded screw, so it is lefty-tighty, you know. This part here that is flat is the portion that a set screw is going to go up against, that we're going to put through here. And this part up here, a big screw is going to connect it into that part. So let's go ahead and get started. First with the big screw that goes up here on the top. There's a hole right here to put a drop of oil in and spin it around. And this here is going to go into that hole right there. So let's see if we can do all of this at once. All right, so I'm just going to start up here at the top. Get that in. Using the wrong bit, of course. I'm going to move you up out of the way a bit here. Okay, so now that that is done, there is a hole over here on this side that I need to be able to get a screwdriver through and line up with this hole right here. So there's the hole in the front of the cog. Sorry about that. This hole in the front of the cog right here next to it is a set screw hole. I need this to line up with that hole. In order to hold it in place while I'm working, I'm going to stick this little wooden handle in there. Okay, it's a hammer handle, just to hold it there. Okay, I'm doing this at night. I should probably wait until tomorrow morning to finish it, but I want to show you I'm twisting this little set screw. I want to make sure I have this seated in the right position. If I don't get this up against the flat part of this cog here, nothing will work. It won't sew. The thread take-up will be in the wrong position. The needle bar will be in the wrong position. It just won't sew. And so at this point, I really want to make sure that I have that correct. I believe I do. But for some reason, my camera is really in my way tonight. And I think what it is I usually have her turned like this way. So I'm going to reorient myself and see if I can get a better look at it. At this point, I know I have it set right because as I was tightening it, I saw this go clink and set, just, you know, rotate just a hair. And so now I should be good. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn, oops, let's turn that handle this way so that I can pull the clamp, the needle bar clamp straight up and down and pull this through. Now, you see this flat part on the needle bar? That has to be rotated so it's directly in the back. And I need to pull this all the way down. So remember, here's my flat part. I've got my needle clamp at its lowest position because do you see this little hole in the back here? I'm going to have to put a screwdriver in and tighten up a screw in the very back of this, okay? I want this to be low enough that I only have maybe 2 millimeters at the most sticking out of that needle bar, maybe even a little bit less. So I'm going to grab this bolt here, nice long bolt, put it on my screw starter and come in the back side here and try to get that started in place. Because it has this hole in the back, you can make an adjustment when you need to adjust your needle bar height at that point. But for right now, I need just to get it tightened up. And in the past, I have found that having not very much sticking out is good. Now, at that point, down here at the bottom, you're going to have a little groove. That needs to be sticking straight out the side or front or whatever we are calling the nose direction. I'm still tightening that screw. Okay. So at this point, if I turn this handwheel in the back, that is moving up and down. All is well. Okay. The only things I have left on the needle bar is a little thread guide and needle clamp. I'm just going to set that aside for right now and grab my presser bar. So over here on this side is a little groove, and this needs to slide in there, but I want to make sure it's actually going to fit first. And I do quite a heavy clear coat. Ooh, I need to turn off that flashlight. Okay, so I'm actually going to come in with a little X-Acto knife and just very carefully skim out some of the paint in there so that this little part can go up and down very easily. Okay, I've got it slid in. You can see I have this screw backed out quite a bit. The tighter that screw is, the wider this piece spreads apart. So now that it's in there, actually once I get the needle bar in, then I'll tighten this up to a position where it's spread enough it won't wiggle, but it's not so far apart that it's going to bind up. So I need to get this piece here, and it's going to screw on right there like that. Right now, I'm going to go ahead and put my presser bar in. There needs to be a washer that it's going to go through. Sometimes this stuff will fit through the top, sometimes it won't. So, you know, I'm just sticking it in here. So I got the washer on top, then the spring, then it's going to go through this bracket and down into the hole below. All right. At this point, it's moving very freely. This is the screw that I use to make my placement for my needle bar. This isn't going to be my final position, but I wanted to show you. I'm just putting a foot on and holding it so I can get an idea of where might be close. And then I can come in and tighten this. I can make the adjustment for the final needle bar height placement later. Okay, but for right now, that's going to be close enough for us to deal with. And every time I do something, I want to turn the wheel and make sure everything is still spinning well. Okay, that way you can find out if you do something that binds stuff up, where that position is. So now I'm going to get the finial, and if you remember, this was actually had black paint on it too, and it does not anymore. And get that screwed in. I'm probably going to screw it down so probably about at least half of those threads are in. And she is really tight here, so I'm going to go ahead and throw some oil on there because we don't need that. And it's a while to turn this in, so give me a minute and I'll be right back. And after I'm done with this, I'm going to put her medallion on, because a lot of times I have to put a little drop of epoxy onto it when I do that. And I'm going to just call it a night. I've been very busy all day. and let this rest overnight, and then tomorrow I can finish putting her together. But by then, if I have to put a little bit of epoxy onto the medallion, it will also be completely dry, so I won't have to worry about that. And I'm using these hammer screws to go in. It's got like very loosely threaded screws. They are size 0. And what I'm going to do is, even though they fit in the holes, I am going to go ahead and put just a drop of clear epoxy over each hole. And then set the pins over that. So first one and the second one here. Okay. Get them started in the right holes. Press that in. There you go. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that overnight just to make sure that epoxy sets really well. And then tomorrow morning, we'll get started putting the bottom of her together. Hello everybody, welcome back to the next morning. So I'm going to start off by putting my tension unit back in. So I have this little set screw. I want to make sure it's going to work in there. And I'm just going to set this casting in. It has an opening over here on this side. I'm going to pop right about there. Okay. So that, and let me tighten it just a hair. Okay. Now, this part needs to go over the spring. On this one, there's not a little hole for the spring to set into. Do I have light? Yeah, I do. Okay. So I just need to put the pressure of me screwing this in is what's going to hold that spring in place. So I'm kind of holding it so the spring is down. Wait. This is a 66. I want to hold it so my spring is up. Sorry about that. And I'm screwing it in. Feeling pretty good. By holding it so the spring is up, I got a lot of spring that way. Actually, that might be a bit too much. Let me pop this back just a hair and put it like this. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Okay. Do you remember the tension release little piece that goes in there? I'm just sticking it all the way in. Putting my 2 tension discs in, and then this washer, okay, then a beehive spring, and then a washer. Then the knurled nut. Okay. Alrighty, so I'm going to get started by getting this piece screwed on, and I'm just coating the inside with my really good nano oil. Because this was extremely sticky last time. So, all right, that feels a lot better. Look at that. So, in addition to the nano oil, I'm in these little holes in the casting. That's for putting a drop of oil in also. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. This hole up here is where that's going to get screwed in. I'm trying to do this without gloves, but it is tricky for me because my hands get so dirty. I'm not like a germaphobe or anything, but sometimes I just get frustrated when I have to really scrub out my fingernails so much every time I go in the house. But anyway. Get this screwed in. Okay, so that's in all the way. This is still moving freely. Yay. All right. Remember this piece? Well, this is another piece that I want to really coat really well with my nano oil here. I'm just going to paint it all over the place here. Throw some on those threads just for fun. Okay, so now I'm going to be putting this big piece on here. All right, and on this one, the curved part is going towards the machine and the flat part is out. Okay, so if I just kind of place that on there just for right now to hold it, this is going to go over this hole in the casting right there. Okay, so I'm going to pop this through, make sure it's already oiled up. I oiled it already. Get that screwed in place. And I want it so that everything's going to move freely. So if I tweak that up, yes, even when I have this as tight as I can make it by hand, this is still moving freely. That is what I want. I'm going to go ahead and put this little screw back on over here. It's a little flatter, large screw. Okay. On this outside here, there is a little clamp kind of screw that I am going to tighten up. Okay. Is it still moving freely? Yes. All right, coming over here, there's a little clamp type of screw right here. And that actually is still tight, so I am good there. Okay. I need to get these little pieces on, but you know what? I am going to set these aside for just a second and get this shaft on first. So this is what it is looking like, okay? This is the position that the feed dogs go in. This part here goes up into that slot right there. And I have this on upside down. Oh my goodness, it's one of those days. Do you ever have one of those days where you just put things on upside down just because? Well, I do. So let me take this off. I should have noticed that before, but I did not. Okay, so you see this slot right here that I'm about to put more oil into. Okay, this bearing here is what's going to travel into that slot. So it needs to be on in this manner here, okay? So just ignore me while I do things backwards. I think I need to go in the house and get one more cup of coffee. I've only had one this morning. But hey, at least we caught it, right? Okay. All right. So now you can see that as I turn it, this does move up and down a little bit. All right. Okay, so now this little hole in the fork there is what this bearing is going to go into. So I'm going to slide that in there, set this in here, and then I have my clean pivot points, and I'm going to need to put a little bit of oil in each side here too. I did that while I was cleaning to these two. To pull these nuts off. You know what, I'm going to go ahead and get these started right now so that when I hold that rock shaft up, it won't take that much just to get it to hold in place. Okay, so let's try that again. Setting that bearing inside of that fork, holding these up so I can start to catch it with these pivot points. You don't want these to be super tight. So let's say I snug that and all of a sudden it stopped. I'm going to back it out a bit. And I want to make sure that that bearing is in that slot and traveling well. Well, it's not going to travel really well until this is connected, and I haven't put the vertical in yet, so. But travel as well as possible at this point. And I think that's pretty good where it is, so I'm going to go ahead and, can't even see what I'm doing with this camera in the way. Put these nuts on. So there's one here. Okay, and the other one, I need to hold the end of that screw so it doesn't screw in more while I'm twisting this. Okay, so at this point, well, pretend that's up like that. It is moving well, all right? Now I need to get this vertical shaft in, and that is what will be connecting down here. That is my stitch length arm. So here it is, all cleaned up. Put this over here. And so the pieces for this, remember this was all glued together. It was quite a mess. Okay, so this bearing, which should be attached onto there, is going to move up and down in here, okay? That was kind of glue welded before, so nothing was working. So now I'm putting, super nano oil on there. This is going to pop onto the fork. Actually, I'm going to put a little more oil around that little nub there. Okay. And just to be safe, I'm going to put more oil all around these threads because I want those to be able to turn in really nicely. And I'm probably going to have to move this machine so I have her up on her nose because that usually helps out a lot. But first, I'm just going to get this started just so it's barely coming into the little cavity in there. Okay, so I've showed this a lot before, but the way that all of this works is, if you saw when I'm putting this in, there is a little gap right here, okay? On this block, there's a little nub sticking out, and that is going to travel in that gap. So as this gets screwed in and screwed out, it's going to move. And actually, I can tell I need more oil around here. Okay. All right, so that's going to move in there, okay? And this angle it produces is going to adjust this arm, which will adjust the stitch length. I can't show you all of that inside here. You're just going to have to take my word for it. So I'm going to slide this in, you see. Get this started off to the side. This, excuse me, I may need to use my magnet on a stick, bring it in from the side or through here, however I can, so that this will then straddle that bearing. Okay, once all of that is set, then there is a little 3-pronged washer here that I'm going to put in this slot and screw that in, and that will connect to this hole here, which will be right over that round bearing. Okay, so give me a minute to get all of that set. All right, got it lined up, getting this screwed in, and I want to make sure while I have it tipped up that if I, see that? I thought I had it all lined up, but that just popped out, so I need to do it again. This is always kind of a pain in the patootie, but it does work eventually. Okay, I believe it's in there correctly. It's feeling a little bit different than some other machines, so that's why I'm saying feelings. But if you can see, this is the part I'm looking at. Let's see, right here, that is the bearing, and it's traveling in that little slot. And that should be the longest stitch length. And if I'm on the front unscrewing this as I speak, and it changes the angle. So that looks pretty good to me. While I was playing with it, I went ahead and reattached, here it is, this big pivot bolt. It's a big shouldered bolt, and there's a 3/8 inch nut down here. This is an adjustment screw, so when it comes time to get the feed dogs placed in the correct position, this is a screw that I will adjust if you're looking. This is what moves the feed dogs forwards and backwards in the little slot. Okay, get my dirty hands off of here, and if this part up here is good, then I can put her back on my board, and we can get the hook and feed dogs and everything put in down here. So down here, this is the little clamp that the bottom of the hook goes in. Here's my little dog bone piece. Have that slid together, and I need to get this screw in here to hold that in place. Okay, so here is my hook, and I'm going to put more oil on that little shaft there, and it's going to go in the top. Oh, goodness, hang on. I need to lift this up out of the way here. Please fit. Please fit. You know what? I'm going to need to lift my presser bar up out of the way before I can get this in place. So hang on a second. It's just a matter of doing some things I previously did. And that is the reason that I usually start on the bottom instead of the top. I don't know why I decided to do it differently this time. Probably just because I'm a glutton for punishment or something like that. Okay, so now I can unscrew this little clampy bolt, push that up out of the way. You know what, I'm going to make sure that that is well oiled inside of that little area in there and cleaned out really well. Okay. There it goes. Okay. So now it is in. Now, coming down here below, I'm going to need it to come all the way through this little clamp. So I'm going to push down on this hook, and you know what? I need to loosen up this screw right here. That's a little bit tight. I leave the screw in sometimes just so I can keep track of it easier. But in this case, that might have been a bad idea. Hang on. Okay, that screw is very well backed out now. Maybe still not enough. Okay. Let me push. There it goes. All right. Now it's in there. You can see the bottom of it peeking out right there. Before I put this screw back in to tighten it, I want to make sure everything is still moving freely when I turn the wheel, and it is, so that's good. Now the placement of this screw, it's gonna have a lot to do with when I get this machine timed up. So for right now, I'm just going to go ahead and put it in here so it looks, you know, presentable. Okay, so there it's in. I'm backing the screw out so it's in there, but it's loose enough that I'll be able to turn this up here, and that's still a little tight. I want to be able to rotate this hook piece. And so that's what I am looking for. It's still a little tight. Okay, so the problem was not the shaft or the hole in the casing. It was actually this clamp. And so I cleaned it out the best I could, and I actually ended up having to take a little screwdriver and tap that opening just a bit, because you want this to be able to turn while it's in there so that you can set the timing. And it was just not. It was like it was clamped totally closed. So hopefully, now I'm going to be back in business here. So if I move this here, and I can push my shaft through easily, turn this over so I have access to this screw hole right there, and get this screw put in once again. I'm going to screw it in, but not like really cinch it in, because I don't want to have it where I can't adjust it, okay? So, there we go. All right, so at this point, everything's moving freely. Yay, life is good. All right. All right, so I'm going to temporarily put my feed dogs on. I say temporarily because I'm going to be taking them off in just a moment. Just got a little wire stuck in my thumb. If you know, you know. So what I'm also doing is grabbing the plate right here. Put this back down below. Okay, this is the plate that's going to go right here. And I want to get my feed dogs set so they're going to fit inside this plate well, okay? So pulling that out, I'm going to slide them down here. All right, I need to flip the machine over so I can screw it on the bottom. And while I'm down there, there's one more set screw I need to put in for the hook that I completely forgot. Well, since I'm looking at it this way, let's do this one first. This is the other one that's going to hold that hook in place. It goes in here. It's a very long threaded screw. Okay. So I'm not going to screw it in all the way right now. I'm just going to put it that far so that it's in there and I'm not going to have to worry about it. Okay. This is the one that's going to attach my feed dogs, and that is going to be right here, okay? So let me get a screw starter, kind of hold them in place from the top here, and get that started in place. Okay. So I'm not really looking for feed dog height placement at this point because I'm going to be taking them out anyway. I'm more looking for all of the adjustments, you know, back and forth and front to back. And I'm going to place a little pillow right here. Okay, so placing my little plate on here. First, I want to see if they are fitting this way. And I can see in here that they are not. They are way too far that direction. So I need to move an entire shaft like 1 millimeter this way. So up here, that's going to mean loosening up the pivot points over here and moving this whole shaft over that way. So I loosened up, moved it over, tighten it up. This is still, you know, it has just a little bit of play, but not much. But I want to show you that now, if I tip her back down, looking at the feed dogs, they're going to travel right in the center, this direction of the plate, okay? So now I'm going to put my stitch length all the way in, which is the longest one. And once again, move this down so you can see. When I'm doing this, where the feed dogs come up, here, there's a little gap of about little less than 1/8 of an inch. And then they go all the way to the back and actually hit the back plate. I need to move these feed dogs forward towards the front so that they're going to be centered in those slots there. Okay, and the place you do that is this screw over here that I said was an adjustment one. So I'm just going to loosen that with my finger really quick. Stick a little screwdriver in the slot, and as I turn it, I'm going to watch what those feed dogs do. And they just move forward ever so slightly. So while they're still in that position, I'm going to hold this side so it doesn't move. Okay, that's good for right now. Then to really cinch it down, well actually before I cinch it down, I need to make sure it's still holding its place. These out of the way here. Yeah, if anything, I moved it too far forward, but they are getting their full range of travel there. So nice, big, long stitch length. That's nice. Hang on, I'm gonna back it up. Just a tiny hair right there. Perfect. Okay, so sorry about that. Putting my screwdriver in the slot. Well, that's a wrong width. I need one skinnier so it'll fit. Okay, putting this screwdriver in the slot here so it will hold that position. Okay, then coming in here and whoops, tightening that up. Okay, now let's just double check one more time that everything is good. Yep, everything is good. Okay, sorry you didn't see that, but just trust me, it is. It's good. So now I can know that I can cinch this down in place. That's a good placement. This is over here. This is over here. You know, get those really tightened up. And then it's pretty much done on the bottom except for hook timing. So then I'll start working up on her top part again. Okay, so I've got her just kind of propped up here. If you're working on a 66 and you don't have a base underneath her and you're trying to do stuff and you're trying to figure out why she's not working, the 66 model, the frustrating thing about it to me is that they made these things so you cannot set them on a table and use them. The hook and everything is lower than the structure of it. So if you lay it straight down on a table or something, all this is going to bind up, nothing's going to work. So that's why I have my little ugly block of 2x4 right here. So you do need a base, you need a case, you need a table, you need something to put it in. If you don't have one, I do sell some on my website. But yeah, you need something to put these in. That's a design flaw in my opinion. But, you know, it is what it is. Okay, we're going to be working on this hook area right here. And I think I still have things taken apart. So, yeah, let me, actually I need to pull these feed dogs out so I can get into there. And then I'll put them back in later. But I need to do a little more work on this. It's clean, it's not highly polished, and I do need to put that wick back in. I'll show you, I need to replace this felt wick on the positioning bracket, and it's got this felt in there. What I'm doing is I just stuck a tiny screwdriver in the end really well, and I am trying to just unscrew it from there. Okay, so this is the old felt. I'm going to cut a new piece and then get that screwed back in. So I have a piece of red felt that I just cut a strip of, folding it in half, and with my screwdriver in there, I'm going to screw it in, hopefully not poking through. There we go. Okay, so the felt is just barely peeking out the bottom. That's what I want. And then I can pull this out. And I'm going to trim these so there's only like a little less than 1/4 inch, a fat 1/8 of an inch of felt sticking out like that. Okay, so I got 2 little lips. That's what I want right now. So I can put that back in. Okay, so I need to get this screwed back into place. This is the bobbin case bracket, positioning bracket that's going to hold it in. This gets screwed into the side here, and you're going to fill it up with oil so that as the hook is spinning around, it will be, moisturized as it goes around. So that feels pretty good. I'm just going to go ahead and get some oil, my little thing here, and just soak this up. All right. And she is going to be going in here. Now, this pin goes through that little hole, and that's going to hold her into the right position. So I actually got some polishing compound into that little hole there, so I need to push that out because that's no good. See how dirty my hands are getting? Rethinking my no gloves for this episode. All right. Okay, so now that pin is back in, and that's going to set into that hole there. So I'm just going to put a tiny touch of oil in there and push that down. Okay, so my little red felt, if you can see right here, that's going to split so that one little piece of red felt is in there and the other one is over here. So as this turns, that little red felt is lubricating it. Okay, so whenever you oil the machine, it's nice to put a drop there. Okay, up here, that is not it. That's part of this. That is part of this too. Okay, I need to give this a quick polish. I'm going to need to screw that on there, but before I do, I need to put this little blade and its little screw on first, because putting that on after is kind of a pain. So let me grab it here. So this is that little blade I'm talking about, lining up that hole, grabbing my screw starter, okay, and just getting that placed in. Drop the screw starter. That's an important step. Okay. Dropping everything seems to be an important step with me. Anyway, now that that is there, now I'm going to go ahead, get this piece, okay? The end pops over that little nub of that post we just put in, like that. And then the other hole is going to line up with that hole in the bracket. And hence, this is the time for this little screw, the unfortunate name, the screw of death. And I'm going to be making an adjustment on this soon, but for right now, I'm just putting it in there for right now. When you need to get the bobbin case in and out, you lift this, with the screwdriver I dropped on the floor, lifting that up, moving it over so you have plenty of room right there. Sometimes I amaze myself. I just put this whole thing in there and forgot to put this piece back onto it. And I even picked it up at one point. Put it back down. So, yeah, let me unscrew this screw. Definitely need to go get more coffee. I need to let the horses out of the barn too. It's cold and they've come in for their breakfast. All right, so lifting this out. This piece, when I took it apart to clean it, I took this off, but I did not put it back together, unfortunately. So that piece is going to go in there, and there's a tiny screw that goes right here, and I need the screw starter for that. Or you know what I'm going to do? I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to stick a little magnet on my little screwdriver here, so it will become a magnetized screwdriver, all in one. Okay, there we go. Make sure there's nothing else I'm forgetting. Can't believe it when I do stuff like that. Well, I know I can, and you've seen it, so you can believe it too. It's just life. It happens. It's like a puzzle, and sometimes you just have to do it a few times. So popping all of this back on. I know this is the wrong screwdriver. Actually, while I have it here, I can show you what this screw's intention is, because it has this whole mysterious aura about it. Okay, if this is screwed in really, really tight, this cannot move. If I wiggle it, it's going to stay where it is. If I loosen it up a hair, okay, underneath, this can move, if you can see. It has a little bit of give. And this little spring I just put on that's sticking out right here, okay, see that? That's what, when I'm making an adjustment later, that's what I'm looking at. I want this to have just enough clearance between that and the bobbin case that thread can go through it. You know, too much, it wiggles, too little, thread binds up. So once this here is in the right position, that's when this gets tightened. It's just another positioning adjustment. People over dramatize it, in my opinion. Okay, let me polish up the bobbin case one more time and then get that popped in. Okay, so now I need to lift this and move it over. This little claw end goes over this nub right there, and it should pop in. Should pop in. There it goes. Well, now it's in there. You want it to sit in that rail. So now that I move that over, here's what you can see. See all that wiggle? That is telling me that I have way too much space between that spring and this little part right here of the thingy, the bobbin case. So I'm going to go ahead, and I do have wire gauges. I know I usually am quite maverick in my ways of getting things adjusted. A lot of times I just push it so that it touches and then back it off just a hair. But Bob's trying to help me with that, Bob Fowler, and he sent me some gauges. So I need to go get those so I can use them just to make sure that I have that spacing correct. Okay, so in the official book, it says that the spacing should be between 0.01 to 0.015 of an inch spacing. So the gauge I'm going to stick in there is 0.014. That's between those two. And I stuck a 66 label on the back so I can remember this one's for 66s, or 99s, okay? So if I stick this between that blade that I showed you and the bobbin case, if I move it through, well, it snags just a hair. So I'm actually going to loosen this and move it through until it does not snag. So after I loosen it, I can move. I can still move this in and out a bit, okay? So I'm going to place this tiny wire, so finicky, up against there. Make sure there's plenty of room. Color good, and I think that that's going to work. Okay, I still have a little bit of play, but hopefully it's good. If not, I can adjust it again. I also do happen to have a 66 bobbin right here, and I'm going to pop that in. This does look like pretty thick thread, but that's okay. Slide it over. Ooh, that's tight. And then up through here. So this feels very tight to me. I'm going to come in the side here, and the larger of these little screws, the one that lines up with that little slot, I'm going to back that out a bit and pull. You know, I need a different screwdriver. This one is just too tiny. There we go. All right, so that's feeling a lot better. I don't want to have to really tug on it, but I don't want it to be, you know, free falling either. Okay, that feels comfortable to me. See how I'm pulling it but barely, and it's coming in nice and smooth. So I'm going to call that good for right now. Again, when I'm adjusting timing and everything later, I can make another adjustment then. It's easy to get to. To get your bobbin out, you push this little button here, it lifts it, and you can take it out, okay? I'm just gonna set that aside for a moment. And actually, I need to go take care of some stuff in the house. I need to let the horses out of the barn, get myself another cup of coffee and a snack, and then I will be back up. Okay, I am back, and now I'm going to go ahead and try to get the needle timed up. So I'm getting a brand new needle out. She does use modern needles. This is what I have. They're a size 15 by 1, size 14. I'm using Oregon needles. Any brand will do ya. Okay. I need to get my needle clamp on here, so let me reach into my little bag, pull this out. Okay, I'm going to slide it up here. Let me raise this up a bit so it'll be easier for me. The flat side of the needle is going to go against, in this little slot here, up against the metal. So there's the flat side in like that, okay? And screw this in to clamp it in. Okay, so on the outside you should have like the little groove going all the way down the needle. Can't really feel it with my gloves. On the inside of the needle is the little cutout area. Okay, so at this point I've taken the feed dogs out. I've taken the bobbin case out because I want to be able to see in here really clearly. Down here below, that little screw, well, it's on the other side of this bracket, is still loosened so that I can move this around. I need to be able to do that. Okay, I'm going to see if I can film this. And I'm just going to go, I usually just don't, but this time I'm going to go step by step in the manual so I can explain how they want you to use all of this stuff. So this here is the finger of the timing gauge, all right? And if you can see on this back clamp, let me get something smaller to point with. These little lines right here, okay? With this turned so it is at its lowest possible position right there, I need to raise this up so that the very top of it, when I'm looking straight at it, is level with this top mark. So I'm just going to kind of pop it up. Get the camera out of my way here. That looks pretty dead on center to me. Just ignore all of the greasy fingerprints. Those will clean off, okay? All right. Now, the next step is to turn the wheel so that the second line is level with the top of that finger, okay? Do you see that? Let me raise it a little bit more here. So you can see there's the bottom. There is the second line right there. Okay. All right, I'm going to try to, I've got my flashlight here, trying to get a little more light in there. What I'm trying to show you, I'm going to show you a picture of it first, is this, where I want the tip, the eye of my needle, to be, look at this little curved here, to be about 1/16 of an inch below the level of this curved piece and directly in front of the tip of that hook, okay? So on here, what I'm looking at, this is that curved piece, that's the very tip of it there. If I'm looking for where the eye of the needle is, it's kind of hard to see. What I'm going to do is put some thread in that needle through that eye so I can see a little more clearly where it is height-wise. Okay, so maybe you can see with the thread going through the eye of the needle, I can see that placement a little bit better. So I'm going to go ahead, turning it all the way down, and then back, continuing back up till that feeler gauge is at the second line, okay? And now I can see where that eye is, and it looks to me actually to be pretty close. If anything, it is slightly low. I'm going to leave it where it is right now. If it's not sewing correctly, then I can come back in and make that adjustment. To, oops, turn that off. To raise the needle bar or lower it, what you'll have to do is do that thing where you bring a screwdriver in the back to loosen that screw that we put in a while ago, which will release this from the needle bar clamp right here so that you can move it up and down. But with this right now in the right position here, with this behind it right there, I need to go ahead and come underneath and tighten up this screw so that it can stay in that position. So I'm just double checking. And actually I'm going to use this screwdriver. It's a little hardier. Okay, let's see here. If I turn where the hand wheel will go, I haven't actually put it on yet, is everything spinning? Yes, it is. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is go ahead, put the bobbin case back in, and put my bobbin in there, just run some thread through, and just see if it's going to pick up a thread. So let me raise this, move it out of the way. Put my bobbin case in. Like that, move it back. Everything still feels right. I'm going to go ahead and put my, no, I'm not going to put my feed dogs in yet, just in case I need to change something, okay? So let me put the bobbin in, okay? And I am going to just place this right over here and put a spool of thread up on top. Again, we're not running it through the tension and anything like that. I just literally want to see if it's going to spin around and pick up. Yeah, I'll just put it over here and like that, just so it'll be kind of in the right direction. I just want to see if it's going to pick up that thread. And I need to trim this. All right. Turning the wheel towards me. See, it's bringing it around. You can see right here. It's gonna bring it through, and we're good. That's all I need to test right now. So I can go ahead and take this off and move forward with putting the feed dogs on and getting these plates screwed back on. I'm going to take that bobbin out again, just for right now. All right, I've got the plate screwed on, I got the feed dogs in, and they look like they might be a little bit high, but again, I can make that adjustment later if they are. To put this bottom plate on here, I need to make sure that these little blade tips, I know I'm bumping my camera stand here, that they are kind of up and inside of the little guides. So I'm just lifting them a bit to get them started there. Now that they are in this little slot, then it can sit well, okay? So when you pull this out, it's only going to go that far. Don't try to force it any further, okay? All right, let me get her off of my little stand here and tip her up on her nose so I can get her hand wheel put back on. Okay, so first of all, let me get her wheel, and I'm going to put extra oil on here and inside the wheel. I just want everything to be coated really well. I'm just smearing it around there. Sorry you can't see. And also, I'm putting oil around the edge here and inside, okay? So now, raising you up so I won't get you hit any more than I need to. Placing this down on there, giving it a spin to make sure nothing is stuck, okay? Put my little 3-pronged washer on. I might have it on the right way, I might not. We will know soon. Have that screwed in, get this little screw here, give it a little tighten, and the way, oopsie, righty-tighty. Okay. If it's in the right way, I can turn this a quarter turn and no more. I got it in the right way the first time. Yay. Okay. You know what? This screw, it's clean, but it's not shiny. I think that's just a battle scar on it. It's just the way it is. So, yeah, everything's good there. Let me go ahead and get her tipped back down. One of the things I still need to do is adjust her presser foot lever, because remember, level, because remember we knocked that out of the whack when I had to put the hook in. And I also need to put her bobbin winder together. So, I'm just going to lay her down, get all of this stuff over here put away real quick. It's just a clamp. Put that off, and board down. Okay, now I can safely move her back here. All right, so to adjust her presser foot, first of all, before I put the presser foot on, I have to put on the dreaded thread cutter, okay? So, make sure the sharp part is up. That's the sharp part there. Okay. Okay, we are good now. I have my feed dogs down. Just ignore that needle being down in the way. I'm just going to slide my presser foot over it. And I'm pulling my presser foot down all the way so it will engage with the foot here. And at this point, I can rotate my presser foot to make sure that the toes are over the little feed dog area, nice and straight. Okay. So if I have that pushed all the way down, just right there, and tighten it up. Well, it's not connected, so pretend I have a bolt right here. Okay, that's a pretty high clearance, which is very nice. If I have not screwed this in yet, I need to, because that is what's going to add the pressure to the feed dogs. So placing that down, so I'm going to put it all the way down so I only have like maybe ½ an inch of threads sticking up. I think that that looks pretty good to start with. All right, before I can finalize this, I need to get my presser foot on, so that means I need to get the thread cutter on. And this one is just giving me so much grief. Oh my goodness. To get a screwdriver in and wiggle it around just to open up that blade a bit. So I'm going to call that good. The sharp part's right there. All right, so let me go ahead and get my foot on and connect it here. I believe I have the right screw. Okay. All right, so see, the foot is moving up and down. Seems to be okay. I don't see any problem right now. I'm just going to go ahead and move forward. I'm going to actually hold off putting the plate on for just a couple more minutes because I do want to try to do a little bit more sewing before I screw that on. Even though there is a thread guide on the front, I know. What I need to do though is move this out of the way so that I can put my bobbin winder together. Alrighty, lots of parts here. And every single bobbin winder seems to be slightly different. I wanted to show you, this is clean, and it did go through evaporust and all kinds of things, but it's just the brown, it's just the pitting that's left over, not brown, black is the pitting left over from the rest that was on there before, okay? But we are good here. So I am going to get started actually with the little follower that's going to go on here. And there's a spring. Looks like this. I've got 3 holes here. I'm putting my spring into the middle hole just because. There's a tiny hole right here that I'm going to stick on that little part of the spring that's poking up. And I need to push the whole thing over and find the screw to hold it together. And it is this one, I believe. So, putting this through. It's going to feel like you kind of just have to smush things. That's the way things are. Let me go ahead and get this tightened up. Okay, and there we go. The spring is doing what the spring needs to do, so that's a good start. Okay, now I'm going to get my bigger cam, and then there's a smaller heart-shaped cam. It's going to go on top of it, like that. And there's a tiny little screw in here that I'm going to need to connect the heart-shaped cam to the big cam. Like that. And before I cinch it in all the way, I'm going to stick this screw in. It's an eccentric bolt. It's not centered, okay? I'm going to stick that through just to make sure that the two are lined up well, and then go ahead and finish cinching that one in. I need a smaller screwdriver. Okay, alrighty. Then we're going to need this little spring, which if I push this over, it's going to fit right in here, okay, curving down towards the casting. This is going to go straight on there, like that. You can see now this little thumb thing goes up against that little smaller cog. Flipping it over, I have this little square nut, and it is going to get screwed on right here. All right, so at this point I want to turn this and make sure that as I turn it, this is moving freely all the way around. And I'm going to test this out on my polisher. Okay. So it's working well with the screw at that angle right there. Okay, so keeping that screw there, I cinch up the back and grab a tiny wrench to be able to get back here. Yes, whoever's messaging me, sorry I'm ignoring you. Okay. And I want to tighten it up and make sure that this still stays at that angle, which I just turned slightly. So if I keep my screwdriver in this way, do it that way, I should be good. Okay, so this is what we've got now, which is the first component of it. Then we've got this monster, which is going to connect it to here, okay? In order to make this make sense to me, what I need to do is kind of put it on here so it places. So here, this little sharp part is what that hook is going to rest on. This little foot right here needs to be able to rest up against this, okay? So if that's the case, that means that this needs to be on this side. Hang on, let me hold it in place here so that I can move the spring. Okay, so if I'm holding it in place, then that means that this has to be on this side of that bracket, okay? But if you look here, there's a place for a spring inside. And this spring has one part that goes straight into a hole in there. The other part is a leg that sticks out, all right? So that comes down. This leg comes down and fits in there. This is going to be here, and this is going to be up here, okay? In general, like that. I'm actually going to put it all together, slightly different order, but that just helps me see how the final product has to go together. So, first thing is I've got 2 screws left, okay? There is one that is very shallow and one that is big. The very shallow one is going to be going up here, okay? The bigger one is going down here. Just to start everything off right and make sure that I have everything placed well, I need to actually make sure that those threads are clean. I'm going to screw this through here into this hole off camera. So I've just got it started in there. You know, this is a big shouldered screw, but I want that to be held in place, moving this over, and I'm going to put the smaller screw in here and tighten it up pretty tight so it'll hold this bracket still. So at this point, I'm just putting it pretty much in the middle of that slot. I can adjust it later, okay? And now I can take this screw out of here and know that this is in the right position, okay? And so this is my least favorite part. So I've got my spring in there. I've got that screw just kind of, well, barely pushed in. Let me just leave it down here for a second, okay? Keeping that little tail in the slot, pushing it so that this little hook is in the right place there, bending it in like that, And as I do it, I need to make sure that this stays in the right position here. Okay, I also need to make sure that spring stays where it needs to stay. Okay, so it's in there. And it's in the wrong spot. Oh my goodness. This is the part I hate. Just give me a second while I question my life choices and get this thing put together. Okay, finally got it back together. I just let the camera roll because if you've done these, you know the struggle is real. It is a pain, but you know what? They do work. Once you get them together, they do work. And then for a while, I couldn't get this screw in because this part had gotten misaligned down there. What a pain. But it is on. I'm going to pop the tire back on her. She just uses a standard size fat tire there. Okay. And I've got a little screw that's going to go through there and bolt her on right down here. Okay. Before I connect it, I'm loosening up this screw so that it can move like that. Okay. And now I'm going to go ahead and get it connected here. Okay, let me get a different screwdriver. Okay, so it is on now. This screw is not tightened. And it's actually, I have a fatter than normal tire on here. So at this point, this is where you would make that adjustment. You want the tire to engage with this part of the wheel. Okay, that's when it's engaged. When it's not engaged, you want it to be able to pop away. Okay, I need it to be all the way up like this. So I'm going to come in now and screw in. I need a different screwdriver. Hang on. Do it from the other side. It would make my life a little bit easier coming at it this way. Okay, so if I pull it down and it's engaging and I turn it, it's doing what it needs to do. Okay, and when this pops up, it's not engaging. So that's where I need this screw to be. You have at least 3/8 of an inch play, you know, depending on your machine. You put it where you need to. Okay, let me put a couple things away, and we are just about done. So if you remember when I first started this machine, this had black paint all over it. Doesn't she look so much prettier now? So very happy with that. Get my microfiber cloth and move some of this junk out of the way here. And then on the front, I'm going to put this smaller screw in first. A screw starter would make my life easier. Okay, it does have a little bit of a shoulder on it so that I can set this on and then let it fall down. And then down at the bottom, there is a thumb screw down here. Okay, I'm going to go clear off my treadle cabinet, pop her into a little box, and we're going to see if we can sew. Okay, so I am back over here at my treadle base, and I didn't have the camera on, but I want to tell you a few things that happened. Delete that. First of all, I had forgotten to put this little thread guide down here on. Little screw on the inside, put that on, put the thread guide on, and I was having a terrible time trying to get her tension balanced. Excuse me. Anyhow, what I ended up having to do was a few things. I had to change out the beehive spring that was in here. It was just too collapsed. It wasn't balancing right. And I also had to adjust the spring down here on the bobbin case. Even though I had the screw out all the way just about down here, it was still too tight, and it's like that spring had just gotten bent, so I had to reform that. So we're good there now too. And I want to show you what I do to, figure out my tension. Once I get it so that there's not any obvious issues like that, then I like to run a diagonal line, okay? If it looks good, but you can tell there's still something off, and then I pull it off the machine and pull it really hard. The side that snaps the first is tighter than the other side. So like on this one, you can see the side that snapped first was the bobbin thread. It was just very tight. Adjusted that, did it again. This time the needle thread broke. And then the third time, neither one broke. They both had exactly the same amount of give, which is great. Oh, one other thing. When I was first trying to troubleshoot this, I had an old spool of thread up on top, and it kept breaking. And I was going crazy trying to figure out what was wrong with the machine. It turns out I had an old spool of thread. So I have thrown that spool away, and I have a good black one and a good white one, and that lets me see the contrast here. So ignore the dropping noises of snow melting on my awning out there. I'm going to show you how she sews, and she does sew, whoopsie, beautifully. Hang on a second, I need to move it a little closer. It's hard to treadle from a distance. Okay. I need to do some work on my table. I just really do here. She works great. It's just a matter of getting my table to sit still here. So at this point, yeah, you can see a little bit of black just because it's a black thread. It's a big size 14 needle, so it's punching a big hole. But I can tell that it is a balanced stitch. It's just looks like that. Okay. And everything is working really, really well. When she goes back to her owner, she's going straight into a treadle cabinet, so we don't need to worry about any of her rocking and rolling on mine here. But I really love her, so I am going to just play off camera, run her through, maybe run a whole bobbin through, test out the bobbin winder, all of that stuff. And then she's going to be ready to go back to her home. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate all your support. And I will see you next time. Bye-bye.